The HSS Normandy materialized at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, a solitary sentinel against the impending storm. Commander Cole Morgan stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the command console. Beside him, Tactical Officer Layla Reyes scanned the incoming data, her eyes darting across holographic displays. "Multiple contacts, sir," Reyes reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Sovereignty fleet approaching. Numbers. They're off the charts." Morgan nodded, his jaw set. "Show me." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a sea of metallic behemoths advancing towards the solar system. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of Sovereignty warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that spoke of technology far beyond humanity's reach. "Quite the welcoming party," Morgan muttered, a hint of gallows humor in his voice. "Status report." Chief Engineer John Russo's voice crackled over the comms. "All systems nominal, Commander. She's purring like a kitten." "A kitten facing a pack of wolves," Reyes added under her breath. Morgan allowed himself a grim smile. "Let's hope this kitten has claws. Battle stations, everyone. You know the drill." As the crew rushed to their positions, tension crackled through the air like static electricity. The Normandy, humanity's latest and most advanced warship, was about to face its ultimate test. Yet from the outside, it appeared laughably outmatched, a lone vessel against an armada. Aboard the Sovereignty flagship, High Commander Orath Dune observed the solitary human ship with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. His segmented eyes narrowed as he addressed his second-in-command. "Explain to me, Sub-Commander, why the humans send a single vessel to meet our glorious fleet? Have they finally accepted the futility of resistance?" Sub-Commander Kane Lore's antennae twitched nervously. "Unknown, High Commander. Our intelligence suggested they were marshaling their forces for a last stand. This is unexpected." Orath Dune's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Scan that ship. I want to know every rivet, every power signature. The humans are cunning. This reeks of deception." As the Sovereignty's advanced sensors probed the Normandy, the bridge crew of the human vessel remained still, every muscle taut with anticipation. Morgan and Reyes exchanged a look, years of shared combat experience allowing for silent communication. "They're scanning us," Reyes confirmed, her fingers dancing across her console. "Should we?" Morgan shook his head. "Not yet. Let them look their fill." Minutes stretched into an eternity as the two forces faced each other across the void. Finally, Kane Lore turned to his superior. "High Commander, our scans are inconclusive. The vessel appears to be a standard human warship, albeit their most advanced model. However, there are anomalies in the readings, power fluctuations we cannot explain." Orath Dune's compound eyes glittered with malice. "So they have developed new technologies. How amusing. Their pathetic attempts at innovation will not save them." He rose from his command throne, towering over his subordinates. "Dispatch the 17th Attack Wing. Let us see what tricks this lone ship can muster." Back on the Normandy, alarms blared as a contingent of Sovereignty vessels broke formation, accelerating towards them. "Incoming!" Reyes shouted. 17, no, 18 ships, cruiser class and above." Morgan's expression hardened. "And so it begins. Helm, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Weapons, stand by." As the Sovereignty attack wing closed in, the crew of the Normandy braced for impact. But instead of the expected barrage, the enemy ships suddenly found themselves firing at empty space. In a maneuver that defied conventional physics, the Normandy had somehow slipped between the incoming plasma bolts, executing a series of rapid position changes that left afterimages in its wake. "What sorcery is this?" Orath Dune snarled, mandibles gnashing in frustration as he watched the impossible dance unfold on his command screen. Hey there, hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel to grow and reach more people. Now let's find out what comes next. The Normandy pirouetted and weaved through the Sovereignty formation, its movements fluid and unpredictable. Each time the alien vessels adjusted their firing solutions, the human ship was already elsewhere, leaving the deadly energies to dissipate harmlessly into the void. On the Normandy's bridge, sweat beaded on Morgan's brow as he called out a rapid series of commands. Three-quarter thrust, Z-axis rotation, Reyes, target their lead ship's propulsion systems. Reyes's fingers flew across her tactical display. Targeting! Firing! A lance of coherent light erupted from the Normandy, slicing through the shields of the Sovereignty cruiser as if they were tissue paper. The enemy vessel's engines sputtered and died, leaving it to drift helplessly. One down, Morgan grunted. 17 to go. The battle continued, a deadly ballet of light and shadow. The Normandy seemed to anticipate every move of the Sovereignty ships, countering with precision strikes that crippled rather than destroyed. It was a display of tactical brilliance that left the alien commanders reeling. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Russo and his team worked feverishly, rerouting power and making split-second adjustments to keep the ship's systems ahead of the strain. "Coolant pressures spiking in Sector 4, shouted Lieutenant Yara Okafor, her dark skin glistening with perspiration. Russo nodded, his hands a blur over the engineering controls. "Compensating! Divert auxiliary power to the heat sinks!" Back on the bridge, Reyes called out, "Sir, they're adapting to our maneuver patterns. Calculating new evasion algorithms now." Morgan gritted his teeth. "Do it fast, Lieutenant. We can't keep this up forever." As if to punctuate his words, a glancing blow from a Sovereignty energy weapon rocked the ship. Sparks showered from a nearby console, and the acrid smell of burned circuitry filled the air. "Damage report," Morgan barked. "Minor hull breach on Deck 3, came the response from damage control. "Automated systems are sealing it now." Morgan nodded grimly. "Keep it together, people. We're not done yet." On the Sovereignty flagship, Orath Dun watched in growing rage as his attack wing floundered against the single human vessel. Ships that should have been more than a match for the Normandy found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. "Impossible!" he roared. "No human ship can move like that. No crew can react with such speed." Kyan Lor, his antennae drooping with shame, offered a tentative explanation. "High Commander, we believe they may be using some form of predictive combat AI, coupled with an advanced inertial dampening system. It's the only way to explain their maneuverability and response times." Orath Dun's eyes narrowed dangerously. "An AI? Have they learned nothing from the machine wars? Arrogant humans, always grasping at power beyond their comprehension." He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the quantum disruptors. If they wish to rely on their precious technology, we shall strip it from them." As the Sovereignty vessels regrouped for another assault, the Normandy's crew worked with clockwork precision. Each member anticipated the needs of others, creating a synergy that bordered on the supernatural. Morgan and Reyes moved in concert, their actions so closely coordinated, they seemed to share a single mind. As Reyes called out enemy positions and weapon charges, Morgan issued a rapid-fire series of course corrections and counterattacks. "Incoming quantum disruption wave," Reyes shouted, her eyes wide with alarm. Morgan's response was immediate. "All hands, brace for impact. Russo, emergency power to the shields." The wave of scintillating energy washed over the Normandy, threatening to short out every system aboard. For a heart-stopping moment, the ship's lights flickered, and the familiar hum of its engines faltered. But then, against all odds, the Normandy surged back to life. The quantum disruption, which should have reduced the vessel to a drifting hulk, had barely phased it. In the stunned silence that followed, Russo's voice came over the comms, tinged with both relief and pride. "It worked, Commander. The multiphasic shielding held." A cheer went up from the crew, quickly stifled as they returned to their duties. Morgan allowed himself a small smile. "Well done, everyone. Now let's show them what we can really do." With renewed vigor, the Normandy launched a counter-offensive. Its movements became even more aggressive, pushing the limits of what should have been possible for a ship its size. Reyes's hands danced across her tactical display, targeting with surgical precision. "Firing solutions locked, Commander." "Permission to engage?" Morgan nodded. "Light 'em up, Lieutenant." The Normandy unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, each shot finding its mark with unerring accuracy. Sovereignty shields flickered and failed, engines sputtered out, and weapon systems went dark. In a matter of minutes, the once mighty attack wing was reduced to a collection of crippled vessels. On the Sovereignty flagship, disbelief turned to fear as Orath Dune watched his elite forces decimated by a single human ship. This cannot be," he stammered, his usual bravado crumbling. "Recall the attack wing. All ships maintain distance from that vessel." As the battered Sovereignty forces retreated, an eerie calm settled over the battlefield. The Normandy hung in space, apparently unscathed, a silent challenge to the vast alien armada. Cain Lor approached his superior cautiously. "High Commander, what are your orders?" Orath Dune's compound eyes darted between the tactical displays, searching for an explanation, a weakness, anything that could explain this impossible turn of events. We must reassess," he said finally, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "That ship, it should not exist. No human technology could achieve what we have witnessed today." As the Sovereignty fleet held its position, a palpable sense of unease spread through its ranks. The invincible armada, which had expected to crush humanity's last defenses with ease, now found itself stymied by a single vessel. Aboard the Normandy, the crew allowed themselves a moment of cautious celebration. Handshakes were exchanged and backs were patted, but everyone knew the battle was far from over. Morgan's voice cut through the low murmur of conversation. "Outstanding work, everyone, but don't get comfortable. This was just the opening salvo." Reyes nodded in agreement, her eyes never leaving her tactical displays. "They're regrouping, sir. I'm detecting increased comm chatter and power fluctuations across their fleet. They're planning something." "Of course they are," Morgan replied grimly. "We've rattled them, but that makes them more dangerous, not less. Stay sharp." As if on cue, a priority message flashed across the main screen. It was from Earth Command, encrypted at the highest level. Morgan input his authorization code, and the message decrypted. "Normandy Actual. Phase 1 complete. Proceed with Phase 2. Godspeed." Morgan exchanged a meaningful look with Reyes. The real test was yet to come. "All hands," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "Prepare for Phase 2. This is what we've trained for. This is why we're here. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, rests on what we do next. I know you won't let us down." As the crew steeled themselves for the challenges ahead, the Normandy hung suspended between the stars, a defiant spark of hope against the overwhelming darkness of the Sovereignty fleet. The next move in this cosmic chess game would determine the future of the human race. In the tense silence that followed, both sides reassessed their strategies. The Sovereignty, shaken by the unexpected resistance, began to view the lone human ship with a mixture of fear and fascination. What other surprises did the Normandy hold? What desperate gambit had driven humanity to stake everything on a single vessel? Aboard the Sovereignty flagship, Orath Dune paced restlessly, his chitinous legs clicking against the metallic floor. The defeat of his attack wing had shattered his confidence, and for the first time since the invasion began, doubt crept into his mind. "Sub-Commander," he snapped, turning to Cain Lor. "Analyze every second of that engagement. I want to know how they did it. No technology can be without weakness." Cain Lor bowed low, his antennae quivering. "At once, High Commander. But, if I may speak freely." Orath Dune's eyes narrowed, but he nodded curtly. "Perhaps," Cain Lor continued hesitantly, "we have underestimated the humans. Their history shows a remarkable ability to innovate in the face of overwhelming odds. This ship, it may represent a leap in their capabilities we had not anticipated." For a moment, Orath Dune seemed ready to lash out at his subordinate for such heretical thoughts. But then his posture softened, ever so slightly. Your words have merit, Cain Lor. We have indeed grown complacent in our superiority. But no more. We will unlock the secrets of this human vessel, and then we will crush them utterly. As the sovereignty leadership grappled with their new reality, the crew of the Normandy worked tirelessly to prepare for the next phase of their mission. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Maya Wahlberg tended to the few injuries sustained during the initial engagement. "How's it looking, Doc?" asked Petty Officer James Rivet Reeves, wincing as she examined a nasty gash on his forearm. Dr. Wahlberg smiled reassuringly as she applied a regenerative gel to the wound. "You'll live, Rivet, though you might want to duck faster next time." Reeves chuckled, then grew serious. "Do you think we can really pull this off? I mean, we bloodied their nose, but there's still a whole lot of them out there." Wahlberg's eyes met his, her gaze steady and determined. "We have to, Rivet. There's no alternative. But if anyone can do it, it's this crew. Now hold still while I seal that cut." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Russo and his team worked feverishly to optimize the Normandy's systems for the challenges ahead. Lieutenant Okafor approached him, datapad in hand. "Chief, I've completed the power redistribution calculations you requested," she reported. "If we reroute auxiliary power through these junctions, we can boost our shield regeneration by 17% without compromising weapons output." Russo studied the figures, impressed. "Excellent work, Yara. Implement the changes immediately. We'll need every advantage we can get." As Okafor hurried off to make the adjustments, Russo allowed himself a moment of reflection. The Normandy was pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible, but at what cost? The strain on the ship's systems was immense, and he knew that sooner or later something would have to give. On the bridge, Commander Morgan and Lieutenant Reyes pored over tactical displays, analyzing the Sovereignty Fleet's movements and discussing potential strategies. "They're being cautious now," Reyes observed, gesturing to the holographic representation of the alien armada. "See how they've tightened their formation? They're protecting their flanks, expecting another hit-and-run attack." Morgan nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Which means we'll need to do something they're not expecting." "Any ideas, Lieutenant?" Reyes bit her lip, considering. "What if we... No, that's crazy." "Crazy might be exactly what we need right now," Morgan replied, a glimmer of interest in his eyes. "Let's hear it." As Reyes outlined her audacious plan, a slow smile spread across Morgan's face. It was risky, borderline suicidal even, but it just might work. And more importantly, it was the last thing the Sovereignty would expect. "Make it happen, Lieutenant," he said finally, "and may whatever gods are out there have mercy on our souls." As the Normandy's crew prepared for their next move, tension mounted on both sides of the cosmic standoff. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, with the actions of a single ship and its brave crew poised to tip the scales. The Sovereignty Fleet, vast and menacing, loomed like a storm cloud on the edge of the solar system. But within that tempest, a seed of doubt had been planted. The invaders, once certain of their victory, now faced an enemy that defied their understanding. And in the void between, the Normandy waited, a David facing an army of Goliaths, ready to prove once again that in the face of overwhelming odds, human ingenuity, courage, and determination could achieve the impossible. The stage was set for the next act in this cosmic drama. As both sides steeled themselves for what was to come, one thing was certain: the battle for Earth's future was far from over. Just 6 months ago, the fate of humanity hung by a thread, though few knew how precarious their situation truly was. In a nondescript building in the heart of Geneva, a group of Earth's most brilliant minds and decorated military leaders gathered in secret, their faces etched with worry and determination. General Sebastian Kapoor, a battle-hardened veteran with more scars than hair, leaned over the holographic display dominating the center of the room. His calloused fingers traced the path of the Sovereignty's conquest across the galaxy, a tide of destruction that seemed unstoppable. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders on smoke-filled battlefields. "What you're about to hear doesn't leave this room. The situation is dire." Dr. Amara Rowe, head of Earth's Xenotech Research Division, stepped forward. Her usually immaculate lab coat was wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes betraying countless sleepless nights. "Our deep cover agents have confirmed our worst fears. The sovereignty has set its sights on Earth. We're next on their list of conquest." A murmur of shock rippled through the assembled group. Admiral Saito, commander of Earth's orbital defense grid, spoke up. "How reliable is this intelligence? We can't afford to act on faulty information." Rowe's expression hardened. "Reliable enough that Agent Caleb Smith gave his life to get it to us." She tapped a command into her datapad, and a series of encrypted transmissions appeared on the main display. "These are the last communications we received from our network within sovereignty space." They paint a grim picture. As the intelligence reports scrolled by, the room fell into a stunned silence. The sovereignty's technological superiority was even greater than they had feared. Their fleets moved with a synchronicity that bordered on precognition, their weapons capable of reducing entire planets to ash in a matter of hours. Colonel Haru Fletcher, head of Earth's Special Forces, broke the silence. "We've seen what happened to the Arcturian Confederation, to the Sirius Alliance. How long do we have?" Rowe's voice was barely above a whisper. 3 months. Maybe 4, if we're lucky. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, fear and anger battling for dominance. General Kapoor slammed his fist on the table, the sharp crack silencing the chaos. "Enough!" he roared. "We didn't come here to panic. We came here to find a way to save our species. Dr. Rowe, what else did our agents discover?" Rowe took a deep breath, centering herself. "It's not all bad news. Our operatives managed to infiltrate several key sovereignty research facilities. We've gleaned insights into their technology, their tactics. It's not much, but it's a start." She pulled up another set of schematics, this time showing the internal workings of a sovereignty warship. Their ships rely heavily on quantum entanglement for communication and targeting. It's what gives them their edge in combat. But every system has its vulnerabilities. We just need to find this one's Achilles heel. As the meeting progressed, plans were formulated and discarded in rapid succession. Traditional military strategies were deemed obsolete against the sovereignty's overwhelming force. It became clear that humanity's survival would depend on innovation, on pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. Outside the secure facility, life in Geneva continued as normal. Citizens went about their daily routines, blissfully unaware of the existential threat looming just beyond the edges of their solar system. But even in their ignorance, there was an undercurrent of unease. News reports spoke of increased military activity, of unexplained phenomena in the outer reaches of colonized space. In orbit above Earth, the first hints of the coming storm were beginning to show. Surveillance outposts went dark without warning. Communication relays experienced unexplained interruptions. Each incident was carefully covered up, explained away as technical malfunctions or solar flare activity. Earth's leaders walked a tightrope, preparing for war while desperately trying to avoid panic. Back in the war room, Admiral Saito was outlining the current state of Earth's defenses. "Our orbital platforms are formidable, but against the kind of firepower the sovereignty can bring to bear, they'd last minutes at best. Our fleet is scattered across a dozen systems, and even if we could recall them all in time, we'd be hopelessly outgunned." Colonel Fletcher interjected, her voice tight with frustration. "What about our ground forces? If we can't stop them in space, we need to be ready to repel a ground invasion." Kapoor shook his head grimly. "The sovereignty doesn't do ground invasions, Colonel. Not anymore. Not since they developed their planet cracker weapons. If they break through our orbital defenses, it's game over." The weight of their situation settled over the room like a shroud. Humanity stood on the brink of extinction, facing an enemy that had crushed civilizations far more advanced than their own. Dr. Rowe cleared her throat, drawing attention back to the holographic display. "There might be a way, she said hesitantly. It's theoretical, highly experimental, and frankly, it borders on insanity. But given our options, she brought up a new set of schematics, complex equations and diagrams filling the air. We've been working on a project, codenamed Excalibur. It's our attempt to reverse engineer some of the sovereignty's quantum technology. The room buzzed with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Admiral Saito leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. And you think this Excalibur could give us an edge against the sovereignty? Ro nodded, her excitement building as she explained. In theory, yes, but we're not talking about building a superweapon here. What we're proposing is more subtle. As she laid out the basics of the plan, faces around the room shifted from disbelief to cautious hope. It was audacious, borderline suicidal, but it just might work. For the first time since the meeting began, a spark of possibility ignited in the room. General Kapoor stood, his expression resolute. Dr. Ro, you have the full resources of Earth's military at your disposal. Whatever you need to make this happen, you'll have it. Admiral Saito, Colonel Fletcher, I want you to begin discreet preparations. We need to be ready to act the moment Excalibur is operational. As the meeting adjourned, the weight of their task settled on each participant's shoulders. They were embarking on a path that would determine the fate of their entire species. Failure meant extinction. Success, success would rewrite the balance of power in the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, Earth became a hive of clandestine activity. Research facilities worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of physics and engineering. Military installations hummed with barely contained energy as new protocols were implemented and contingencies planned. But even as humanity raced against time to prepare for the coming storm, the first skirmishes of the war were already being fought in the shadows. On the fringes of the solar system, stealth probes from both sides engaged in a deadly dance of cat and mouse. Earth's deep space listening posts strained to intercept and decode sovereignty communications, each scrap of intelligence potentially vital to their survival. In a hidden facility beneath the Atacama Desert, a team of Earth's most skilled hackers and AI specialists worked tirelessly to penetrate the sovereignty's quantum networks. Their mission was as crucial as it was dangerous: to plant false information, sow confusion, and buy Earth precious time. Maria Lima, lead programmer of the Cyber Warfare Division, hadn't seen daylight in weeks. Her fingers flew across holographic keyboards, lines of code streaming by faster than the human eye could follow. Suddenly, she sat bolt upright, her eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and fear. "I'm in," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "Holy shit, I'm actually in their system." Alarms blared as her intrusion was detected, sovereignty countermeasures launching a blistering assault on Earth's digital defenses. For 17 heart-stopping minutes, Lima and her team fought a virtual battle that spanned light years, their actions potentially altering the course of the coming war. When the digital smoke cleared, Earth had won its first victory against the sovereignty. It was small, largely symbolic, but it proved one crucial fact: the invaders were not invincible. They could be deceived, outmaneuvered, beaten. As news of the cyber battle spread through the highest echelons of Earth's leadership, a new sense of purpose ignited. In briefing rooms and command centers across the globe, strategies were refined, contingencies updated. The impossible task of preparing for war against a vastly superior foe began to feel, slightly less impossible. But even as Earth celebrated this small victory, the true cost of their resistance was becoming clear. In the Oort cloud, a sovereignty patrol stumbled upon one of humanity's cloaked observation posts. The ensuing battle was brief, brutal, and entirely one-sided. When the wreckage of Earth's outpost was recovered, the full horror of what they faced became apparent. The sovereignty's weapons had torn through their most advanced shielding like tissue paper. The few recovered bodies showed signs of exotic particle exposure that defied conventional physics. In the war room in Geneva, General Kapoor studied the after-action report, his face a mask of grim determination. "This is what we're up against," he said, addressing the assembled leaders. "Their technology, their weapons, they're beyond anything we've encountered before. Conventional tactics won't cut it. We need to think outside the box, way outside the box." Admiral Saito nodded in agreement. "We need a force that can stand toe-to-toe with the sovereignty. Not in terms of firepower, we'll never match them there, but in terms of innovation, adaptability, sheer human ingenuity." Colonel Fletcher leaned forward, a glint of excitement in her eyes. "I think I know where we can find such a force. But you're not going to like it, sir." As Fletcher outlined her proposal, eyebrows raised around the room. It was unorthodox, to say the least. Assembling a crew not just from the military's elite, but from a cross-section of humanity's best and brightest. Scientists, engineers, tacticians, even civilian specialists with unique skills. A team that could think on its feet, adapt to the impossible, and pull off the kind of miracles they'd need to survive against the sovereignty. General Kapoor's initial skepticism gave way to grudging approval as the plan took shape. "Do it," he ordered. "But keep it quiet. If word of this gets out, panic will spread faster than we can contain it." And so began one of the most secretive and intensive recruitment drives in human history. Across the globe, individuals with exceptional skills found themselves approached by shadowy figures, offered the chance to be part of something greater than themselves. Many jumped at the opportunity. Others needed convincing. A few flat out refused, only to find themselves drafted under obscure wartime provisions. In a repurposed mining facility on Mars, the training began. The disparate group of recruits was forged into a cohesive unit through grueling physical and mental exercises. They were pushed to their limits and beyond, forced to innovate and adapt to scenarios that defied conventional logic. Cole Morgan, a decorated naval officer with a reputation for unorthodox tactics, emerged as a natural leader during these trials. His ability to think 3 steps ahead of any situation made him the clear choice for command. Alongside him, Layla Reyes, a brilliant tactician with a background in theoretical physics, proved invaluable in devising strategies to counter the sovereignty's advanced technology. Her unconventional approach to problem-solving complemented Morgan's leadership perfectly. As the training progressed, other key members of the team began to stand out. John Russo, a prodigy in the field of quantum engineering, whose insights would prove crucial in the development of Earth's new defensive technologies. Dr. Maya Valberg, a xenobiologist with a talent for thinking like the enemy, providing invaluable insights into sovereignty psychology and potential weaknesses. But even as this elite team took shape, time was running out. Intelligence reports indicated that the sovereignty's invasion fleet was mobilizing faster than anticipated. Earth's window of opportunity was rapidly closing. In a final, desperate push, Dr. Rowe and her team worked around the clock to complete the Excalibur project. The fate of humanity would rest on the shoulders of this hand-picked crew and the revolutionary technology they would wield. As the training facility on Mars buzzed with activity, final preparations being made for the mission that would determine the fate of the human race, a sense of nervous anticipation filled the air. Each member of the crew knew the stakes, understood the near impossibility of their task. Yet there was also a palpable excitement, a shared belief that they stood on the precipice of something truly historic. In his quarters, Commander Morgan studied the latest intelligence reports, his mind racing through potential scenarios. The weight of command settled heavily on his shoulders, but there was a fire in his eyes that spoke of unwavering determination. Whatever the sovereignty threw at them, he and his crew would be ready. The stage was set. Humanity's best hope, a single ship crewed by an exceptional team, prepared to face an armada that had crushed entire civilizations. Against impossible odds, they would fight not just for victory, but for the very survival of their species. As the final hours ticked away, the crew of what would become the HSS Normandy made their last preparations, each acutely aware that they might never see Earth again. Yet in the face of such overwhelming danger, there was no fear, only resolute determination. For they carried with them the hopes and dreams of every human being, the indomitable spirit that had carried their species from cave-dwelling primitives to a spacefaring civilization. The Sovereignty fleet hung in space like a metallic thundercloud, its vastness defying comprehension. At its center, the colossal flagship pulsed with barely contained energy, a silent promise of devastation. High Commander Orath Dune's compound eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "This lone human vessel continues to defy us," he hissed, his voice a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. "Send in the 7th Assault Wing. I want that ship reduced to atoms." On the bridge of the HSS Normandy, Commander Cole Morgan felt the weight of the entire human race on his shoulders. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he barked out orders, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. "Incoming! Multiple hostiles, Vector 227 by 115. Lieutenant Layla Reyes, her fingers dancing across the tactical console, responded without looking up. "I see them, sir. Calculating intercept trajectories now." The Normandy's bridge crew moved with practiced precision, each member a vital cog in a well-oiled machine. But beneath their professional demeanor, the strain was beginning to show. Dark circles under eyes, hands that trembled ever so slightly when not occupied, the occasional sharp intake of breath as another near miss rocked the ship. As the 7th Assault Wing closed in, its ships moving in perfect, terrifying synchronization, Morgan made a split-second decision. "Helm, execute Maneuver Sigma 3. Weapons, prepare to fire on my mark." The Normandy suddenly plunged downward, relative to the incoming Sovereignty vessels, its inertial dampeners straining to compensate for the impossible G-forces. Just as the enemy ships adjusted their firing solutions, the Normandy cut its main engines and fired its maneuvering thrusters in a complex sequence. The result was a corkscrew maneuver that no organic pilot could have executed, no conventional ship could have withstood. The Sovereignty weapons fire passed harmlessly through the space the Normandy had occupied milliseconds before. "Now!" Morgan shouted. "Hit them while they're recalibrating!" Reyes didn't need to be told twice. Her fingers flew across the weapons console, targeting systems locking onto the briefly vulnerable Sovereignty ships. The Normandy's main cannon roared to life, spitting lances of coherent energy that sliced through the enemy formation. 3 Sovereignty cruisers erupted in silent explosions, their hulls shattered by the precision strikes. The remaining ships scattered, their perfect formation broken. In the Normandy's engine room, Chief Engineer John Russo fought a different kind of battle. Warning klaxons blared as systems pushed far beyond their design limits threatened to fail. "Coolant pressure in the starboard nacelle is critical," shouted Lieutenant Yara Okafor, her voice barely audible over the din of overworked machinery. Russo's hands moved in a blur across his console, rerouting power and coolant flow in real time. "Diverting auxiliary power to compensate. Yara, I need you to manually vent the excess heat from Junction 17B. As Okafor raced to comply, Russo allowed himself a grim smile. They were keeping the Normandy together with spit and baling wire, but they were doing it. Every impossible maneuver, every devastating attack was a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Back on the bridge, Dr. Maya Valberg monitored the crew's vital signs, her medical training warring with her sense of duty. The stress levels she was seeing were far into the red, way beyond what any human should endure, but they had no choice. The fate of their entire species hung in the balance. "Cole," she said quietly, using the commander's first name in a rare breach of protocol. "The crew can't take much more of this. We're pushing them beyond all safe limits." Morgan met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and regret. "I know, Maya, but we have to hold on. Just a little longer." As if to punctuate his words, another volley of Sovereignty weapons fire slammed into the Normandy's shields. The ship bucked violently, sending crew members sprawling across their stations. "Shields at 37% and falling," Reyes called out, her voice tight with tension. "We can't take many more hits like that." Morgan gripped his command chair, his knuckles white. "Helm, execute evasive pattern Delta 9. Weapons target their lead ship's propulsion systems. Let's see if we can't slow them down a bit. As the Normandy danced through the void, avoiding the bulk of the incoming fire through a series of maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics, Reyes lined up her shot. A burst of concentrated energy lashed out, catching the Sovereignty lead ship squarely in its engine array. The massive vessel's acceleration faltered, its sleek form suddenly ungainly as it struggled to compensate. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, the Normandy slipped past the disrupted formation, buying itself a few precious seconds of respite. In the Sovereignty flagship, High Commander Orath Dune seethed with rage. "Impossible!" he roared, his mandibles clacking furiously. "No single ship should be able to stand against us, let alone inflict damage." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Kinelaw, approached cautiously. "High Commander, our analysts believe the humans may have developed some form of predictive combat AI. It's the only explanation for their impossible reaction times and maneuvers." Orath Dune's compound eyes narrowed dangerously. "An AI? Have they learned nothing from the machine wars? Arrogant humans, always grasping at power beyond their comprehension." He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the quantum disruptors. If they wish to rely on their precious technology, we shall strip it from them." As the Sovereignty fleet regrouped for another assault, the crew of the Normandy worked with clockwork precision. Each member anticipated the needs of others, creating a synergy that bordered on the supernatural. Petty Officer James Rivet Reeves, manning the sensor array, called out, "New energy signature detected. They're charging something big." Morgan and Reyes exchanged a look of grim understanding. This was the moment they had trained for, the scenario they had run countless simulations to prepare for. "All hands, brace for impact." Morgan's voice rang out over the ship-wide comm. "Prepare for maneuver Omega." The Normandy's engines flared to life, pushing the ship into a series of tight, corkscrewing maneuvers that no human pilot could have executed. As the Sovereignty quantum disruptors fired, the space around the Normandy lit up with exotic energies, reality itself seeming to warp and twist. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as if the Normandy had been caught in the disruptor's field. The ship's lights flickered, gravity failed, and a bone-deep vibration shook every bulkhead. But then, against all odds, the Normandy surged forward, breaking free of the disruptor field's influence. The impossible maneuver had worked, placing the ship in the Sovereignty fleet's blind spot. In the engine room, Russo and his team fought to keep the overtaxed systems from failing completely. "Coolant leak on deck 3, Okafor shouted, her hands flying over her console. "Sealing bulkheads now!" Russo nodded grimly, rerouting power to compensate for the lost systems. "Good work, Yara. Now help me stabilize the warp core before we tear ourselves apart." On the bridge, Reyes allowed herself a fierce grin as she lined up her next shot. "Firing solutions locked, Commander. Permission to return the favor?" Morgan nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Light 'em up, Lieutenant. Show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." The Normandy's main cannon roared to life once more, its energy beams slicing through the confusion of the battlefield to strike at the heart of the Sovereignty formation. 2 more enemy cruisers erupted in silent explosions, their destruction a testament to human precision and determination. As the battle raged on, the toll on the Normandy's crew became increasingly apparent. Fatigue etched deep lines in faces too young for such weariness. Hands trembled from a combination of stress and stimpack overuse. But still, they fought on, each member drawing strength from the unwavering resolve of their comrades. Doctor. Valberg moved from station to station, administering emergency treatments and offering words of encouragement. "Just a little longer," she murmured, injecting a crewman with a cocktail of stimulants and pain suppressors. "Hold on. For Earth. For all of us." In the ship's CIC, Tactical Officer Paige Fisher, no relation to the chief engineer, pored over the constantly updating strategic display. "Commander," she called out, her voice tight with barely contained excitement. "I think I've found a pattern in their fleet movements. There's a vulnerability in their formation. but we'll only have a few seconds to exploit it. Morgan was at her side in an instant, studying the display intensely. Good work, Lieutenant. Helm, prepare for high-energy turn on my mark. Weapons, I want every available system ready to fire the moment we complete our rotation. As the Normandy executed yet another seemingly impossible maneuver, slipping through gaps in the sovereignty formation that shouldn't have existed, the contrast between appearance and reality became stark. To the sovereignty, the human vessel seemed to move with preternatural grace and precision, always one step ahead, always in the perfect position to strike. It was as if they faced not a ship, but some kind of space-borne predator, evolved over eons to hunt in the void. But inside the Normandy, the reality was far different. Every maneuver was a carefully calculated risk. Every successful evasion the result of countless hours of training and preparation. The ship groaned and shuddered, pushed far beyond its design limits. Warning klaxons blared constantly, only to be silenced by crew members too busy fighting for survival to acknowledge them. In a rare moment of relative calm, Morgan allowed himself to study his crew. Pride swelled in his chest as he watched them work, each member giving their all in the face of overwhelming odds. They had trained for this, prepared for every contingency, but the reality of combat against a vastly superior foe was testing them in ways no simulation ever could. He thought of Reyes, her tactical brilliance shining through in every precision strike and last-second evasion. Of Russo, working miracles in the engine room to keep their overtaxed systems running. Of Dr. Wahlberg, her medical skills and unwavering compassion holding the crew together in body and spirit. Each member of the Normandy's crew was a hero in their own right, their individual strengths combining to create something greater than the sum of its parts. It was this, Morgan realized, that gave them a fighting chance against the sovereignty. Not advanced technology or impossible maneuvers, but the indomitable human spirit. The refusal to give up even when faced with insurmountable odds. As the Normandy continued its deadly dance through the heart of the sovereignty fleet, buying precious time for the rest of humanity's forces to mobilize, Morgan allowed himself a moment of hope. They were bloodied, battered, pushed to the very limits of human endurance. But they were still fighting, still defying the odds. And as long as they drew breath, as long as a single human heart continued to beat in defiance of the sovereignty's overwhelming might, there was hope. Hope for victory. Hope for survival. Hope for a future where humanity would take its place among the stars, not as conquerors or slaves, but as equals. With renewed determination, Morgan turned back to the tactical display. "All right, people," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. "Let's show these aliens what humanity is really capable of. For Earth!" The crew's response was immediate and overwhelming. "For Earth!" They chorused, their voices united in a battle cry that seemed to make the very bulkheads vibrate with its intensity. And so the Normandy fought on, a lone ship against an armada, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species. The battle was far from over, the outcome still uncertain. But in that moment, as human ingenuity and determination stood firm against the technological might of the sovereignty, one thing became clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. A few weeks before the Normandy's fateful confrontation with the sovereignty fleet, the air in the underground war room beneath Geneva crackled with tension. The world's brightest minds and most decorated military leaders had gathered once again, this time to unveil humanity's last, desperate hope for survival. Dr. Amara Rowe stood before the assembled group, her usual lab coat replaced by a crisp military uniform. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed countless sleepless nights, but her voice rang clear and strong as she addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you is the culmination of years of research, countless sacrifices, and more than a little desperation." With a gesture, she brought up a holographic display of a device that looked like a cross between a particle accelerator and a star's core. "I give you the Quantum Electromagnetic Pulse Generator, or QEMP for short." The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the slowly rotating hologram. Admiral Saito leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And this QEMP, it's our silver bullet against the sovereignty? Ro's expression tightened. In theory, yes. But the risks, well, they're considerable. She tapped a command, and the hologram expanded, showing the QEMP's internal workings in intricate detail. The QEMP works by generating a pulse of quantum-entangled particles. When detonated, it creates a cascade effect that disrupts all advanced technology within its radius. Shields, weapons, propulsion systems, all rendered useless. General Kapoor's eyes narrowed. Sounds too good to be true, Doctor. What's the catch? Ro took a deep breath. The catch, General, is twofold. First, the energy requirements are astronomical. We're talking about the kind of power output you'd see in a star going nova. Second, if the sovereignty detects this technology before we can use it, they'll adapt. We'll lose our only advantage. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, questions, and objections flying from all directions. Ro raised her hands, calling for silence. Please let me finish. We've found a solution to both problems, but it's not going to be an easy pill to swallow. With another command, the hologram shifted, showing the familiar outline of a starship. As the assembled leaders watched, the QEMP device seemed to merge with the ship's engine core, becoming an integral part of its structure. We've integrated the QEMP into the very heart of our most advanced ship, the HSS Normandy, Ro explained. By linking it directly to the quantum drive, we can mask its energy signature. To the sovereignty's sensors, it'll look like nothing more than an experimental propulsion system. Colonel Fletcher leaned forward, her eyes sharp. And the power requirements. Ro's expression grew grim. That's where it gets complicated. The ship's reactor alone isn't enough. We need an enormous surge of energy to trigger the QEMP at full power. The kind of energy you'd see in a collision, Admiral Saito finished, his voice barely above a whisper. You're talking about a suicide mission. The room fell deathly silent as the implications sank in. Ro nodded slowly. Not just any collision. A collision at the precise moment of initiating a quantum jump. The energy released would be, it would be enough. General Kapoor slammed his fist on the table. This is insanity! We can't ask our people to sacrifice themselves like this. We're not asking anyone, General. A new voice cut through the tension. All heads turned to see Commander Cole Morgan stride into the room, followed closely by Lieutenant Layla Reyes. Both wore expressions of grim determination. With all due respect, Morgan continued, this isn't a decision for you to make. It's ours, and we've made it. Reyes stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. The Normandy is our ship, her crew, our family. If anyone's going to take her into battle, it's going to be us. The room erupted once again, arguments flying back and forth. But as the debate raged, Morgan and Reyes stood firm, their resolve unshakable. Slowly, the voices died down, replaced by a sense of grudging respect and admiration. Admiral Saito was the first to break the silence. You understand what you're volunteering for? The odds of survival are non-existent, Reyes finished for him. We know. But the odds of humanity's survival if we don't do this are even worse. Morgan nodded in agreement. We've run the simulations, studied the intel. This is our best shot, our only shot, at stopping the sovereignty before they reach Earth. As the gravity of the situation settled over the room, Dr. Ro cleared her throat. There's one more thing you should know. She brought up a new set of schematics, these showing the Normandy's bridge configuration. Given the precision required for this mission, we've determined that having both of you in command will significantly increase our chances of success. Reyes's eyebrow arched. Both of us? On the bridge? Ro nodded. Your skills are complementary. Commander Morgan, Your expertise in tactical maneuvering and spatial awareness is unparalleled. And Lieutenant Reyes, your mastery of weapon systems and predictive targeting algorithms is second to none. Together, you represent humanity's best chance at pulling off this miracle. The two officers exchanged a look, years of mutual respect and trust passing between them in an instant. Then, as one, they turned back to the assembled leaders and nodded. "We're in," Morgan said simply. "All the way," Reyes added. The next few hours were a whirlwind of tactical discussions and last-minute preparations. As the finer points of the plan were hashed out, the unique dynamics between Morgan and Reyes became increasingly apparent. Morgan's approach to piloting was almost artistic, relying on intuition and a deep understanding of spatial relationships. He could visualize complex maneuvers in his head, plotting courses that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Reyes, on the other hand, was all about precision and calculation. Her mind worked like a supercomputer, running countless simulations in real time to predict enemy movements and identify the perfect moment to strike. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. Where Morgan saw opportunities, Reyes saw risks. Where Reyes calculated odds, Morgan found the human factor that could tip the scales. Their back and forth was like watching a complex dance, each step and counterstep bringing them closer to a perfect strategy. As the meeting wound down, General Kapoor pulled the two officers aside. "I won't insult you by asking if you're sure about this," he said gruffly. "But I need to know, are you prepared for what this means? Not just for you, but for your crew?" Morgan's jaw tightened. "We've thought of nothing else, sir. Every member of the Normandy's crew is a volunteer. They know the risks, and they've all chosen to stand with us." Reyes nodded in agreement. "We're not just fighting for humanity's survival, General. We're fighting for its soul, to show the galaxy that we won't go quietly, that we'll stand against tyranny, no matter the cost." In the days that followed, final preparations were made in utmost secrecy. The Normandy was outfitted with its deadly cargo, its systems fine-tuned to perfection. Every member of the crew underwent rigorous training, pushing themselves to the absolute limits of human endurance and beyond. Throughout it all, Morgan and Reyes were a constant presence, their unwavering determination inspiring all those around them. They worked tirelessly, refining strategies, running simulations, and preparing for every possible contingency. But in quiet moments, when the weight of their responsibility threatened to overwhelm them, they found strength in each other. A shared look, a nod of understanding, a hand on a shoulder, small gestures that spoke volumes about the bond between them. As the day of departure drew near, Morgan and Reyes stood together in the Normandy's observation deck, gazing out at the Earth they had sworn to protect. The blue-green orb hung suspended in the void, beautiful and fragile. "Do you think we can really do this, Cole?" Reyes asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Morgan was silent for a long moment. "I don't know, Layla," he finally admitted. "But I do know this. If anyone can pull off this insane plan, it's us. You, me, and the finest crew ever assembled." Reyes nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Well, when you put it like that." She turned to face him, her expression growing serious. "Whatever happens out there, it's been an honor serving with you." Morgan met her gaze, his own eyes reflecting the same mix of determination and acceptance. "The honor's been mine, Layla. Now, let's go make history." As they turned to leave, to take their places on the bridge and lead humanity into its greatest battle, the Earth continued its slow rotation behind them. Unaware of the monumental events about to unfold, billions of people went about their daily lives, their hopes and dreams resting on the shoulders of a brave few. The stage was set, the players were in position. And as the Normandy prepared to embark on its fateful journey, the future of an entire species hung in the balance. The battle that would determine the fate of humanity was about to begin. The Normandy's hull screamed in protest as Commander Morgan executed yet another impossible maneuver. The ship corkscrewed through a hail of enemy fire, its shields flickering dangerously with each near miss. "Shields at 3%!" Lieutenant Reyes shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We can't take much more of this, Cole." Morgan's jaw clenched as he surveyed the tactical display. The Sovereignty fleet surrounded them, a vast web of deadly firepower closing in from all sides. But there, at the center of the enemy formation, loomed their target, the massive Sovereignty mothership. "We're not out of this fight yet," Morgan growled. "Reyes, divert all non-essential power to the engines and weapons. We're going to punch a hole straight through their lines." Reyes nodded grimly, her fingers flying across her console. "Aye, Commander, but our structural integrity is critical. One wrong move and we'll tear ourselves apart." "Then we don't make a wrong move," Morgan replied, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "All hands, brace for extreme maneuvers." The Normandy surged forward, its engines pushed far beyond their design limits. Morgan weaved through the enemy formation with preternatural skill, each movement precisely calculated to avoid the worst of the incoming fire. A Sovereignty cruiser loomed directly ahead, its weapons ports glowing with building energy. Morgan's hands danced across the controls, sending the Normandy into a tight barrel roll. The alien energy beams passed within meters of their hull, close enough that the crew could feel the heat through the ship's compromised shielding. "Return fire!" Morgan ordered. "Target their propulsion systems." Reyes didn't need to be told twice. The Normandy's main guns roared to life, spitting lances of coherent energy that sliced through the Sovereignty cruiser's defenses. The alien ship's engines exploded in a silent fireball, sending it spinning out of control. But the victory was short-lived. A barrage of fire from 3 other Sovereignty vessels caught the Normandy as it emerged from its evasive maneuver. The ship bucked violently, alarms screaming as new hull breaches opened across its length. "Hull integrity at 26%. Chief Engineer Russo's voice crackled over the comms, barely audible over the sound of rupturing metal. "Commander, we can't take another hit like that!" Morgan gritted his teeth, his eyes scanning the tactical display for any advantage, any weakness in the Sovereignty's formation. "Reyes, what's the status on the QEMP?" "Charging but slowly," Reyes replied, her voice tight with tension. "The damage to our power systems is slowing the process. We need at least 2 more minutes before we can initiate the quantum jump." 2 minutes. It might as well have been an eternity in the midst of this firestorm. Morgan's mind raced, calculating trajectories, analyzing the ebb and flow of the battle around them. They needed to buy time, to find a way to survive long enough to deliver their payload. "New contact," Reyes suddenly shouted. "Massive energy spike from the Sovereignty mothership. They're charging some kind of superweapon." Morgan's blood ran cold. If that weapon fired, it wouldn't just be the end of the Normandy. It could obliterate a significant portion of the human fleet hiding in wait. They were out of time. "Plot a course directly for the mothership," Morgan ordered, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "We're going to thread the needle." Reyes's eyes widened as she realized his plan. "Cole, that's insane. The gravitational stresses alone could tear us apart before we even reach our target." "It's our only shot," Morgan replied. "Divert all remaining power to structural integrity and the QEMP. We'll use the gravitational fields of the Sovereignty ships to slingshot us towards the mothership." It was a maneuver that defied conventional physics, a desperate gambit that pushed the limits of what was possible. But in that moment, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, the impossible was their only option. The Normandy dove into the heart of the Sovereignty fleet, weaving between massive alien vessels with mere meters to spare. Each pass brought them closer to their target, the ship groaning and shuddering as conflicting gravitational forces threatened to tear it apart. On the bridge, warning klaxons blared as system after system redlined. The crew fought to stay conscious as G-forces fluctuated wildly, blood rushing to their heads one moment and draining away the next. "QEMP at 95% charge," Reyes called out, her voice strained. "But our hull integrity is failing. We're breaking up." Morgan could see the Sovereignty mothership looming before them, its superweapon glowing with building energy. It was now or never. "Initiate quantum jump," he roared. "Take us in!" The familiar hum of the quantum drive rose to a deafening crescendo. Reality seemed to bend around the Normandy as it executed a jump that should have been impossible. A leap that began in normal space and was intended to end inside the Sovereignty mothership itself. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the crew of the Normandy existed in two places at once. They were still on their bridge, klaxons blaring and systems failing around them. But they were also elsewhere, occupying the same space as the Sovereignty mothership's vital systems. And then, with a sound that defied description, the two realities collided. The resulting explosion was beyond anything humanity had ever witnessed. The QMP detonated with the force of a small sun going nova. The quantum energies released, tearing a hole in the very fabric of space-time. A sphere of blinding energy expanded outward at impossible speed, engulfing the Sovereignty fleet in its entirety. Ship after ship went dark, their advanced systems overloaded and destroyed by the quantum pulse. The space around the Sovereignty mothership became a graveyard of dead vessels, their once fearsome weapons and impenetrable shields rendered useless in an instant. As the light of the explosion faded, a new sight greeted the stunned Sovereignty forces. Emerging from their hiding places behind Jupiter's moons, hundreds of human ships appeared, their weapons primed and ready. Admiral Saito's voice crackled over the fleet-wide comm channel. "All ships, engage the remaining enemy vessels. Today we finish what the Normandy started." The human fleet surged forward, unleashing a devastating barrage against the crippled Sovereignty armada. Lasers and kinetic rounds crisscrossed the void, tearing into alien hulls that no longer had their advanced defenses to protect them. Yet even in their weakened state, the Sovereignty fought back with desperate ferocity. Those ships whose systems had partially survived the QEMP returned fire, their weapons still deadly despite the loss of their targeting computers. The space around the massive Sovereignty mothership became a maelstrom of destruction. Human dreadnoughts unleashed salvos of magnetically accelerated rounds, each impact sending shockwaves through the alien vessel. Swarms of fighters and bombers exploited gaps in its defenses, delivering pinpoint strikes against critical systems. Admiral Saito coordinated the assault with cold precision, his tactical genius shining through as he directed the human fleet. "Battle Group Alpha, concentrate fire on their flagship's engines. Carrier Group, launch all fighters and target their weapon emplacements. We need to end this now." The battle raged on, a titanic struggle between human determination and Sovereignty desperation. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. One by one, the remaining alien ships were disabled or destroyed, unable to match the coordinated assault of the human forces. As the last pockets of resistance were mopped up, a stunned silence fell over the human fleet. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had prevailed. Admiral Saito stood on the bridge of his flagship, surveying the aftermath of the battle. The cost had been staggering. Countless lives lost, ships destroyed, the Normandy and its brave crew sacrificed. But humanity had survived. More than that, they had won their freedom and their future among the stars. "Send word to Earth," Saito said softly, his voice heavy with the weight of their victory. Tell them it's over. We've won." Hey there again. I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.